Hello, welcome to the recorded version of Automotive Design, an Overview and Looking to the Future with Aysar Ghassan. My name's Stephen Powley and I was the host for this event along with Michelle Tyndall. We're both volunteers with the Institution of Engineering and Technology's Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire local network, who organised a talk in partnership with Robot Day and Quad Derby. Robot Day is an event series that celebrates science, technology, engineering, arts and mathematics, or STEAM, through robotics, automation and artificial intelligence. This lecture was generously hosted by Quad Derby, Derby's cultural hub with a focus on digital media. It was our first in-person event since before the pandemic and also our first simultaneous live broadcast. We experienced a few technical glitches on the day, which we've edited out in this version.
Tonight's speaker is Aysar Ghassan. Aysar is the Programme Director for the highly respected MA, Masters of Arts in Automotive and Transport Design. He's published his research widely in leading international journals and conference proceedings, and he also contributes to design magazines and websites, including the Road Rat and From Art, Trends and Arts Thread. Aysar has also written and presented a talk on automotive design for Radio 3's The Essay, titled The Essay, Postcards from Coventry, The Arts of Cars. And if he can do a good job on radio, then I'm looking forward to seeing what he can do with slides. That would be great. So in addition, Aysar runs Car Design Shorts, which is a space that uncovers the visual tricks that car designers use when they create concept and production cars. Car Design Shorts also contains sketching tutorials from professional designers, so a great place to go. And in the little box out there you can see, search up Car Design Shorts on YouTube or at car_design_shorts if you're on Instagram.
So my name's Aysar. Thank you very much, Stephen, for introducing us. We're going to talk a little bit about automotive design today. And I lead the course at the MA at Coventry University, which I very much enjoy doing, and we've come from Coventry today. Okay. So first of all, just a brief definition, and this definition's all over the internet. So it's just like on Wikipedia and other reliable sources as to what automotive design is. So you can see it's the process of developing the appearance of vehicles and to some extent ergonomics. So this, the physical appearance of mobile products, vehicles, cars, trains, buses, that kind of thing. So there's loads of design in vehicles. Here we can see there's for example on a car, the BMW here, there's the full body, the exterior design we might call it. There's the interior, which is the overview of the interior, plus all the fantastic details that go into the interior. There's the exterior details, such as lighting, and the lighting is now really, really complex. There's, we call them daylight signatures. So these, the lights that are on by law now, all day, the daylight signatures that were introduced by Volvo, I guess, for safety measures. And they're very much associated with they give us hints into the brand and the brand values of the vehicle. They need designing, exterior details such as wheels, and also UI, user interface or user experience, which is all the digital interfaces that we find inside cars now. There's so much stuff. Anyone who's got a kind of newer car or access to newer cars, or even access to the internet and looks up newer cars, then you'll know how much stuff there is out there, to design. So this talk is in three parts, as all the best things are, I guess, come in threes. So I'm going to give a very brief history, to look at also skills and presentations associated with, a very brief history into car design, automotive design, looking at skills and specialisms in automotive design, and just kind of a little look at perhaps into this kind of the crystal ball of the future, seeing what we see. And it's a little bit of a whistle-stop tour into the world of automotive design. But there's so much to say, but we only have time for a certain amount. Okay, so we'll start off with a very brief history. So, vehicles have always been designed. So this Rolls-Royce, this Phantom, you can see it's got a kind of a wooden coach-built, well, half wooden coach-built body, a little bit like a boat, very tasteful. But these kind of vehicles are bespoke. They're made for well-off clients, obviously. There's a chassis, and then they're shipped off to a coach builder, and then they're made to specification, and that's fine. But that's not really what I'm going to be talking about today. It's more kind of a little bit more insight into the industrial, the kind of industrial design, the kind of design for mass manufacture, if that makes sense. So, perhaps it's said anyway that vehicle design as we know it today got started with General Motors in the States. And this is a quote from Alfred Sloan, who was the boss of General Motors at the time in the 20s, and he was so the future of General Motors vehicles is to make them aesthetically desirable to customers in order to, I guess, get customers interested in them, and then to make them want to kind of buy a new version quite reasonably regularly to keep the economy going, to keep General Motors going, to keep the economy going. So that's really the start of vehicle design, or the philosophy of vehicle design as we know it today. So that philosophy took the kind of the groundwork was laid on the 11th floor of this building, which is the Argonaut building in Detroit, which is a General Motors building at the time. And on the 11th floor, they had the art and color section, and that's where the designers worked. So they weren't, I don't think, at the time really called designers. It was more about aesthetics, art, and color and materials. So design, as we know it today, even the terms have changed. So this video is just going to give us a little bit of an insight into what happened in this on the 11th floor of this building. This is some of the kind of setup of the 11th floor. The design director at the time was a gentleman by the name of Harley J. Earl, and he created the world's first concept car, just pre-war, pre-Second World War. And this is the Buick Y-Job, and it had a lot of really interesting features. Now we're used to concept cars now. We're used to some amazing concept cars that come out of the studios. This concept car obviously wasn't made to be sold. It was just going to give us customers an insight into what the future was to hold, and kind of keep us guessing a little bit, and to press attention, which it did. So this particular concept car had electric windows. It had it had kind of flip-up headlights. It had really sort of mod cons and a kind of flip-up roof as well, which had never been seen before. Electric roof, which had never been seen before. So it was really, really quite innovative. As well as what we call OEMs, the big manufacturers, the design studios, there are also consultancies, and they do design work as well. And often the big manufacturers will farm off work to consultancies in order to create competition, to keep their designers on their toes. So one such very, very famous designer is Giugiaro, Giugietto Giugiaro from Ishel Design. Yeah, he worked for loads of the European and American manufacturers over the years, and he designed lots of concept cars and production cars. One of these cars is the original Volkswagen Golf, Mark I Golf. Well, car design isn't just done by designers working in studios that are owned by the manufacturers, it's also done by consultancies to give the designers, basically give them competition and give fresh insight. So, moving to the present day, large companies like Mercedes-Benz have quite a few design studios around the world. For example, their advanced design section, they've got 5 advanced design studios located across the world, and their job is to look at what's happening in culture, what's happening in fashion, just really to kind of absorb these things and then obviously turn these or kind of reflect these, translate them into the cars of tomorrow. So one such car is this, which is the Mercedes AVTR from a couple of years ago. So just like the Buick Y-Job, a vehicle like this is giving us a glimpse into the future technology, future user experience, how we might interact with our vehicles in a few years' time. So we're going to move on now to talk a little bit about processes, skills, specialisms associated with automotive vehicle design. So the work I'm going to show you is done by some graduates from the course I run, and I've got 3 graduates. The first one is Tane Nandanwar, and he now works for a consultancy based in the Midlands. And we'll show you a little bit about the design process, the kind of skills that designers need, and the kind of things that a designer might do from ideation to a final result. So designers will start off by doing some research into the user or the potential customer, looking at inspiration images, looking at a future scenario as well for the vehicle that they're going to design. So this particular vehicle was an SUV vehicle, an SUV project, small SUV project. Looking at timelines, looking at kind of where they're going to set in the future the vehicle. And here we've got some initial ideation sketches that have been done by Tane, more developed sketches using Photoshop. And then we've got like a key sketch here, which is the kind of direction that Tane wants to push further. Then developing those themes further, slightly more developed renders or illustrations, renderings we call them. Little bit more colour, some little bit more details associated with them. Some orthographic views, just really trying to hone the design a little bit more. Then some design details. Here we've got wheels. There's loads and loads of details, but just on this page, wheels. Little bit more complete renders with the wheels attached. Then some interior design, and there would have been a lot of different a lot of work going into this interior. This is just like a page, but there would have been hours and hours going into it to get to this stage. And this is a little bit of ergonomics work. So we call it a package drawing, and that would be to see how the occupants fit inside the vehicle. Obviously, the point is that they fit in, that they can move around, that they can reach the gauges, and the steering wheel. That from, for example, the front view, their shoulders don't stick out of the body, etc., etc. And once the package is kind of sorted, then the designer will go into 3D. And up here we've got CAD images, the development of CAD images, a little bit of clay work to kind of tease out some proportions with the clay, the automotive clay. And then jumping a step ahead, we've got some kind of photorealistic CAD work. So this is a CAD image rendered in a photorealistic scenario. And then from there, and we can see in context the vehicle in context, how it sits on the road, how it sits against other, next to other vehicles, etc., etc. And that's really important. It gives us a little bit of, just like a little bit of colour, a little bit of extra feeling to the illustration, to the rendering. Another graduate, this is Tom Zier, and he's recently started working for a company called Ola, again based in the Midlands. Well, they're actually an Indian company, but they've got a design studio in the Midlands. And he's just here designing a race car. Again, starting with inspiration images, quite rough sketches, looking at a kind of a package, different views. Top view, we call it a plan view, the side view, etc. Design directions, more side views, front three-quarter renderings, just trying to kind of hone the design more, and looking at the kind of shape and the proportions of the vehicle. Now here, Tom has gone into 3D CAD, and he's got his surfaces there. He's inspecting his surfaces in the top left and right images, and there we're looking at how the reflections work, whether we call it curvature, whether the design has curvature, which means that there's a smoothness, a slickness among the surfaces that allow the reflections to really flow. And then there's a kind of a sketch illustration, a sketch render at the bottom there. Then a little bit later, there's more developed renderings of this design. So that's another designer, a young designer, who's using this kind of process in order to get to their design result. Tom then used the data from the CAD file data to prototype this design, the exterior, the detailing, and then put it all together, and there you've got the photos from the final design, which is really, really impressive. So another graduate, Francis. Francis is really I mean, you think Tom's work's great, Tane's work's fantastic, but Francis is a real specialist in 3D CAD. And we've got another video, and just not going to go through some sketches from Francis because we've had a look at sketches. This is an animation using CAD to create an animation for a project that we had with JCB. So this is a 60-ton dump truck, and you can see the functions of the tipping action is shown here for the dump truck. It gives us kind of, again, it takes a static design, and obviously it gives us a little bit more realism associated with it. Okay, so just to summarise for now, some of the careers that are available in automotive and transport design are user or market research, looking at the future, looking at demographics, looking at trends, and then exterior design, which is obviously the outside of the vehicle, the interior design, looking at component and detailing. There are opportunities available for designers who solely specialise in doing detailing, like lighting, because lighting is so complicated now. It's so competitive. So that there's opportunities available with lighting. There's colour, material and finish designers, and they specialise in the types of materials that we find, often on the interior and the colours and the fabrics and the different trim levels that we have, from more basic models to sport to luxury to more expensive models, etc. Then there's digital interface designers, and they'll be looking at what we call the user interface of the digital screens in the vehicle. Physical modelers, clay modelers, or other types of physical modelling that are used in the studio. The digital modelers that we've seen example of digital modelling, and digital visualization. So there are specialists who deal with animations and really high level visualizations, and they're often done for internal presentations to sell to the board in order to get the funding for a project. So some of the jobs I've been talking about, the design process, this video basically runs through the design of a Mercedes here. So here we can see the clay modelers at work, looking at some of the different proposals for this particular vehicle, looking at materials, sickling in the clay there, some one-to-one scale models.
So could you explain why they're making a clay model when they've got the 3D CAD?
Yes, good question. Well, the 3D CAD obviously allows us to see something on a screen, and we can have an animation, and that's all well and good. But a 3D CAD, a clay model, a physical model, allows us to walk around the vehicle, to kind of see it from different angles and walk around it, and to feel the surface more importantly, because feeling the surface allows us to really find out the strengths and weaknesses of the surfaces in terms of how they blend together, how well they blend together or not. And obviously, at the end of the day, the vehicle will be a physical product. So seeing it, as we can see here, under these lighting conditions, allows us to see the imperfections and kind of, hopefully kind of get rid of them before it gets to production. We're going to now look at the future of, the future is obviously uncertain, I guess, but we're going to just have a little delve into it and see what we can imagine the future to bring. So there's tons and tons of things to talk about, but today I'm just going to talk about a couple of things. And firstly, some technological and material, social and environmental issues that are associated with future car design, and then the design process itself. So I'm going to look at three concepts that look at different aspects of social and environmental issues and technological issues, and just talk about them. Three recent concepts, and this is GAC, a Chinese company, GAC Moca. It's a really interesting concept car from a couple of years ago. And this car kind of looks at how we might reinterpret user interface or reimagine, and the identity of the customer, the user. And we might say, is this vehicle a four-wheeled smartphone? So here at the front and the rear of the vehicle, and also on the wheels, we have lighting systems. We have, they're configurable, just as on your mobile phone screen. So you can display whatever you like, really, if you choose to. And the interior is configurable as well. So when you get bored of certain trims or colours or seating, you can order up totally new seating and trim and that kind of thing. So it's a really interesting way to think about how we might consume vehicles in the future, how we might adapt them for our own purposes, how we can express our identity through them, if we choose to do that. And would we want to do that or not? And it kind of opens up debate. There's basically a catalogue of different seats and materials and trims and different things, from kind of sofas to individual seating, that a person might choose to fit their Mocha with. The second concept we're going to look at is the Renault Easy Automotive. And this vehicle looks at autonomous technology, so driverless technology, and how we might reinterpret luxury. And we might think of this as a lounge. So in the future, if we're not driving, then what might we be doing in the vehicle? So the inspiration here is a luxury hotel or a luxury bar or sitting room, perhaps sort of Stanway Road type of sitting room. Yeah, to see what might we do if we've got a little bit more money to spend on a vehicle in the future. So here you can see the beautiful kind of timber floor, beautiful refined detailing, kind of architectural roof. You can see how refined it is, beautiful lighting. So obviously there's no driver, so why not have a luxury experience in your vehicle, chatting away, reading a newspaper, perhaps purchasing some Bitcoin. Who knows what people will be doing. And you can see this as going from five-star hotel to the airport, etc., etc. A contemporary of, but totally different to the GAC Moca. So if we move on to the final concept, which is the most recent concept, this I think was last month, I believe, or earlier last month this was launched, the Citroën Oli, and this concept rethinks mobility and looks at sustainability in terms of we've got loads, we consume loads, we throw away loads, and its kind of strapline is enough, like enough is enough. And how can we reuse, how can we slim down the amount of materials in a vehicle? How can we slow down? So this vehicle is limited, the speed is limited I think to either 58 or 68 miles per hour, I can't remember, but it's totally limited. It's about getting somewhere slowly. It's about really having a different experience and relationship with your vehicle than you do now, not hurrying around. So this seat, for example, there's only three materials used in these seats to make them lighter, to make them easier to recycle. So some real thought leadership there from Citroën. So you can see that the three different concepts, three very different concepts, but all I guess, looking at future ways that we might be using or interacting with, and relationships with, debates, discussions with our cars. So some questions really in terms of where the future of mobility might take us. So we've got the identity of our user, our customer, versus the identity of a brand. If cars are adaptable and we can change the exterior of them through lighting, through screens, how might we know what brand we're driving? How might we have brand recognition? These are real conversations and debates for the future. Are we going to choose sustainability over sales? Can we have both? Are we going to have autonomous technology, or are we going to continue with human drivers? And do we want to be slow or fast? Virtual reality allows us to sketch in 3D, so we can use a headset and we can use controllers, and we're producing sketches that they look like they're in 2D, but they're actually in 3D, and then we can go and prototype those sketches. So this is a friend of mine who works in VR, and he's created this little video for us of a vehicle. He's designing a vehicle in 3D. So you can take this vehicle that my friend's constructed, and you can go and prototype it, which is extraordinary. Okay, I'm just going to talk very briefly about artificial intelligence, and that's, along with VR, a real future for automotive design. So AI allows us to, well, it's basically a computer creating original design for us, original artworks for us. And AI programs can use text, prompts, or they can use no prompts, or text prompts, or image prompts to create designs for us. So on the right here, the small shot is a AI produced image. Tom's here, who's one of the designers we featured earlier. He's created this rendering from that AI-produced image, and then a kind of a better rendering. So AI can be used as a kind of inspiration. And if you want to look up this video, it's really, really incredible, and it shows AI being used to a very different level, to really quite scary level actually, in terms of the potential that AI has. The potential is kind of bewildering, really. So I'm just going to leave you by saying we've looked at these possibilities for design, or questions around automotive design. We'll finally to say, well, will cars transport products be designed by humans, or will they be designed by AI in the future? One last thing to leave you with, if you guys are interested in automotive design at all, then please look up my YouTube channel, Car Design Shorts, or on Instagram, and there's tons of more information about automotive design there, including sketch demos and short videos on trends, etc. Thanks very much for your time. Thank you.
Thank you ever so much, Aysar. That's brilliant. So much going on. So it sounds like even with AI, you're still going to have a job going into the future.
Perhaps just doing talks.
Perhaps just doing talks
about how things used to be.
Let's hope not. So we've got lots of questions coming in. Anybody in the room want to ask a question to start with? Okay, no, we've not got any eager beavers in the room. So I've got a question.
Yeah.
What happened to all those lovely curves? So we saw the Buick, and we had cars like the E-Type that were gorgeous and curvaceous, and we still see it a lot in concept cars. But the cars I see on the road look a bit different. Why is that?
Aerodynamically speaking, sharp corners are more efficient. So for aerodynamic purposes, car designers tend to kind of have squared off, or to produce squared off cars, and also squared off looking cars look bigger. So cars are getting higher, taller, wider, but there's only a certain limit in terms of road and how wide a car can get. So by giving cars corners, designers can make them look bigger without them actually being bigger. So corners are really, really interesting strategy for making a customer feel as though they're getting more for their money.
Okay, so do you think the wholesale move to electric vehicles will fundamentally change any aspects of vehicle design, e.g. Driven by opportunities to change the packaging of the car?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I mean, some of the videos we watched today really, they really bring up, some of those potentials in terms of, well, we could have lounge-style vehicles where people are facing each other, so there's no need for somebody sitting at the front driving. So we could have people facing each other, having conversations, people sitting on the side, reclining, etc. So cars might perhaps, one direction they could go in is becoming kind of lounges, sitting rooms. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, and another question from the floor now.
Yeah, you briefly mentioned aerodynamics. I was just wondering whether they still use wind tunnels, or if it's all done with computer modelling and simulation.
Yeah, it's a lot of it's done with simulation now.
Okay.
Yeah, because I mean, wind tunnels are really expensive, really expensive, but you can get all this same information using CAD package now.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. But just say we do have a wind tunnel at the university still. Yeah.
Okay, do you think that it's inevitable that we'll move fully to touch screens, or do you think there'll always be like physical controls in a car?
Yeah, another really good question. I think there's again, it's one of these verses, isn't it? It's like kind of the analog versus the digital. And I think that in the last few years there's been this move to go back to analogue, to this sort of supposed authentic, you know, we miss the haptics of touching something, the feel, the quality of the material, the actual, the act of moving something, of feeling the resistance, etc. Yeah, it's a perennial debate, I think, in design. Yeah, I think with the Citroën OLE concept that we looked at, the last one, that's very much about haptics. It's simple, the interior, there's some dial, some toggles, and just your mobile phone. There's no great big fancy screen in there.
So, at what stage in the concept design process do the engineers responsible for performance and manufacturing get involved?
Yeah, well, actually, it could be from the beginning, depending on the project. So if it's a project that's going to go into production, then they'll have a package from the very beginning in terms of the dimensions, where people are sitting, the occupants, where the engine is, where the fuel tank is, etc., etc., where what we call the A-pillars, where the pillars are that come down, where the chassis, you know, all the crash protection elements, and then the design aspect is just the exterior design is the skinning of those elements to give it a kind of a beautiful surface, both interior and exterior. So that. It could be from the very beginning. It could be driven by the engineering package, or if it's more of a concept car, then that might not come into play very much because it's just something that's for the press really and for marketing purposes, for the internet.
Someone's saying here it's interesting that clay modelling is still used. I take it that's easier to create a smoother finish with clay and make subtle changes rather than with 3D printing.
No, it's not well, that's again a really good question. 3D printing is when a model is 3D printed, it comes out quite rough, and then it has to be sort of sanded down and sort of finished. But with and it can be beautifully finished. You can get any finish you like on it. It can be absolutely, the reflections can be absolutely perfect and wonderful. The clay model, it's quite easy to make changes quite quickly because you know you can work away at something and then you can kind of think, well, I don't like that, I do like that, and you can put some more clay on it and you can sort of start that little bit again. And there's something very particular about clay modelling in that it allows you to see big surfaces that you can't really see when you do a CAD model on a small screen. So it allows you to sort of walk around and look and sort of, you know, bend down and look at different angles that you can't necessarily do when you're looking at a screen in front of you. You can rotate the model around, of course, but you can't see it from different angles like you would do on the road. Mm-hmm. So there's something very particular about clay modelling, and clay modelling's. There's been debate. There's been people naysayers saying for a long time, I think, about clay models dead. You know, CAD has taken over, but clay modelers sort of hang in there, and clay modelling hangs in there as a really valued art, I suppose.
Yeah. Follow-up question from me. You said like you can make changes with the clay model. Is it then easy to get those changes back into your like digital design?
Yeah. So when I had the list of automotive or automotive design jobs or opportunities or careers, mm-hmm. You know, they're all separate. The words are all separate, but actually the designers work together. So the CAD modelers and the clay modelers will work together. So you can scan a clay model, a digital scan, and then that information can be taken into CAD and then worked on in CAD. Or you can take a CAD model and then you can mill the clay or a rough clay from the CAD model, and you can just keep going back and forth until you get the desired effect. So it's not either or. There's this sort of this sort of iterative, cyclic workflow.
Okay, there's a few questions or comments from people about concept cars and that we continually see concept cars, and we don't tend to then see those driving around on the road maybe, or no one's probably ever seen anything that looks like a concept car driving around on the road. And then another kind of comment on concept cars as well is that they seem to be quite big and long, and we don't have that much space and congestion, and maybe they shouldn't be so long. And then also another comment maybe on the size of car as well, if you could maybe comment on, because a lot of cars are getting bigger and have really big wheels, so how big could we possibly go with cars? So sorry, that I thought I'd throw a few themed questions at you there.
Okay, well, the concept cars, I think that one of the things about concept cars is that they divide public opinion quite a lot, and I guess it's their job to, because the designers, the manufacturers are throwing ideas out, and they're seeing which stick with journalists, with drivers, with potential customers, and seeing what works and what doesn't, what people can stomach and what people can't, what people are ready for and what they're not ready for. And sometimes with concept cars, what happens, no matter how kind of almost ridiculous a concept car will be, what the manufacturers are actually doing is that they're previewing a new face, a new kind of proportion. So if you I haven't got this in this presentation, but if you were to say look back at Mercedes concept cars from the last 10 years, 15 years, then some of them are kind of really way out there, and there's some really amazing things that we're not going to see just yet, because we haven't got the technology isn't affordable for us to see it yet. But you can see that that within those concept cars, they're developing the faces and the proportions that we see now. So they're kind of teasing these to the customer, 5 years, a few years before they're on the forecourt. So they kind of make us used to these things. And the size of vehicles, how big they're going to get, I don't know, to be honest. But I think that obviously SUVs are huge. They're getting wider, much wider. But I think that almost more importantly than how big they're getting dimension-wise, is how kind of ferocious they're looking. Because the more corners they have, the more bits kind of jutting out they have, the bigger they look. So all of these design features are strategies used to kind of trick the eye to make us feel as though we're getting much bigger vehicles than we actually are. Because there's only a certain, you've got to think, well, a vehicle can't be wider than a supermarket car parking space, but it's got to feel enormous.
Thank you, Aysar. Yeah, so we're just out of time on the questions. Just a thought, because this is a Robot Day lecture, maybe the autonomy that we're going to see in cars in future gives us an opportunity for those different sizes and shapes, because we don't have to park.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, there's a lot of concepts that are, self-driving, and they go and kind of basically go and undertake a mission for you while you're kind of, relaxing and resting, and all of those things. The technology's there for them, but right now for them to exist. But right now the legislation hasn't caught up with the technology, so we're not allowed to do that just yet. But in a few years, I'm sure we probably will.
Thank you very much. And unfortunately, that's all we've got time for tonight. So thank you once again, Aysar. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for inviting me. Thank you
for the interesting talk. Thank you to the audience in the room for making your way through the rainy night of Derby. We really appreciate you making the effort. And thank you to everyone online, and good night.